Hi guys. Hope your days are going pretty great. Mine is. Today I want to talk about perception and the power that perception has over experience and our view of reality, and mine, yours, everybody's. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think it's so important to develop a relationship with your own perception, and finally how that can help you cultivate a sense of inner peace that's pretty unshakable. So, stepping right in, perception's in the driver's seat. The way that you perceive any situation really bridges the gap between how you feel about that situation and how you could feel about that situation. So, what I mean in a more direct example is let's say you perceive hunger as a really great thing. And maybe you do so because of the oxidative stress it puts on your body and autophagy, or maybe it's because you feel like you're not worthy necessarily of the comfort of eating. It doesn't necessarily matter if there's a good reason, a bad reason, a negative reason, positive reason as to why you perceive hunger as a great thing. But in this example, let's just say you do. Because you're willing, or probably more willing, to sit in hunger because it's a good thing for whatever reason, you're far more likely to be on the skinny or even anorexic end of the spectrum, versus somebody that perceives hunger as a really bad thing. Maybe they're super concerned about their blood glucose levels, or discomfort is something that is just really bad and they can't handle, and so there's panic alarms going off every time that they're hungry. They're more likely to be on the larger, or call it obese, end of the spectrum. So one input, hunger, led to two totally different results based off of perception. And perception works that way with everything, not just hunger. Every experience you have to perceive in some manner. You glean information about that experience with your senses and previous knowledge and education, and that helps you mold, at least at first, how you perceive that situation. Now, something that a lot of people do is they perceive something and then they fight themselves on their own perception. And so I'll give you an example. So let's say you're at work and there's a promotion and it goes to your coworker, but you perceive the work that you do as higher quality, and you get through more work quantity wise, and maybe you put in more hours, and you just perceive yourself as somebody who deserved the promotion more than your coworker did. So again, it doesn't necessarily matter yet why you perceive the way that you do, but the fact that you do makes you have a negative reaction inside to his promotion or her promotion. You feel betrayed. You feel like you're not valued, and then that can cascade over to, okay, well, am I really happy with my day? Or am I really happy with my relationship or my job? Or what am I doing here? Is this just something I'm wasting my time with? And so that disruption of inner peace caused by your perception can snowball and cascade. But the opposite is also true. If you can develop a relationship with your perception and find the good in that injustice towards you, or in that perceived injustice towards you, and perhaps glean happiness in the success of your coworker, or indulge in the positivity behind your company doing well enough to have a promotion in the first place, then you can snowball that forward into, yeah, this is great. I'm adding value to a company that's growing and we're doing well, and I've been a part of this for a long time, and you can take pride in that, and then that can roll over into and I've also been succeeding at these other things, X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. It's, again, perception. And so the way that you perceive has just an extraordinarily large amount of power on the way that you experience. Now, developing a relationship with your own perception is kind of a tricky thing if you've never tried, you've never thought about it. Again, because it's far easier just to have a tyrannical relationship where your left brain steps in every time there's a feeling that you don't want to feel, and you shove it down and you say, no, we're going to react to this way. We're going to go over there and eat my pride, eat my negative emotion, and go to my coworker and be like, oh, this is great. I'm so happy for you, even though inside you're not. And although it's much easier to do that, it's not a good strategy. And it's not a good strategy for a few reasons, but the dominant reason that it's not a good strategy is the sense of peace and flow, the organic expression of beauty and just resonant peace that flow can afford you is disrupted. Even if on the outside you use your left brain to kind of hijack the controls to your actions and express something else that makes you seem as if you're in a state of inner peace, your inner peace itself was still disrupted by you not being able to perceive good in a bad situation. The best way, I think, to develop a relationship with perspective is by educating yourself as much as you can about and becoming really intimate with whatever the thing that you are perceiving is, whether that be a technical problem, like a math problem, or if it's something about a relationship, or if it's it doesn't matter. The more information and education that you can give yourself surrounding whatever it is that you're perceiving, whether that be this promotion or hunger or whatever, allows you to gain a more holistic and broad perspective on that thing. And by gaining that broad perspective, by educating and gaining that broad perspective, it makes it far easier to see the good and the beauty in otherwise bad situations. And on the flip side, which is also important, see the negative aspects to positive situations. Now, I can understand why you wouldn't want the latter. People seek bliss. They seek just extraordinary positive experience their whole lives. And it's easy to kind of fall into that vice, but that also is an unwinnable game. It's a bad strategy. If you want to reduce yourself to a brain, the human brain is not meant to continually perceive bliss, to continually be happy, which is different than peace and content. And the reason is that your brain will quite literally develop psychological but also physiological tolerance to happiness. If you have too much serotonin, you go to serotonin syndrome, or maybe you gain more serotonin receptors or reuptake. Maybe an unhealthy relationship with dopamine gives you a really addictive personality. So if you're succeeding and achieving all the time, you're now much more likely to engage in activities, maybe perhaps like smoking or alcohol, that have this mesolimbic dopamine type pathway. And so that's, again, only on the physiological end, but seeking bliss continually is an unwinnable game, because when bliss becomes the new norm and now you have to step higher, how do you do that? And that leads to a state of discontent, and it disrupts your inner peace, because now that inkling of, this isn't bliss, this isn't perfect, this isn't a complete positive experience, disrupts what otherwise has been a positive experience up to that point, and now you're thrown down to the other end of the spectrum. So it's incredibly important to foster a relationship with your perspective through the tool of education, but also through the tool of awareness, that you can glean the positive and negative, the good and the bad in every single scenario. Cultivating that as a practice leads you to a very balanced state of peace. And the reason being is because although it's undeniable that positive and negative experiences exist, they exist because our perceptions have an inkling to perceive the good or the bad in a scenario as opposed to the other. When we're in a state of comfort or we're in what we perceive as a positive experience, our perception has an inkling to just perceive the positive and try not to perceive the negative. And the same is true when we're perceiving a negative experience. Our inkling is for our perception to just perceive the negative and not perceive any of the positive. So again, fostering a relationship where you can see both the negative and the positive in every experience allows negative and positive experiences to kind of become the same thing, because you're gleaning good and bad from both of them. And by taking a very balanced view like that, it opens up the door for inner peace to really flourish, because now you're not unbalanced in your pursuit of bliss, or you're not in the prison of wallowing in your own misery and all of the perceived negatives in your life. One thing that a lot of people do is they They take the good and they take the good, right? And then they leave it, they enjoy it, they have it. And then they take the bad and then they suppress it, kind of like we were talking about earlier. And they say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this now, or I'm going to deal with this later in the form of working out. And thus far in their life, they're like, all right, and that gives me balance because it gives me relativity. I still have the bad and I can still indulge in the good. And then I'm dealing with my negative emotion when I work out, or I'm just going to run this out. I'm going to hit the bag. I would argue that although that's a better strategy than doing nothing, it's still not that good of a strategy, because that state of flow or inner peace that you could have been cultivating throughout all of those experiences, good and bad, is disrupted when you hit that bliss point and you can't maintain anymore, and it's like, oh, that was great, I still wish it was happening, and now you're living in the past. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it's like your peace is disrupted, and because of that negative perceived injustice perhaps of that promotion, and you live it there and you're disrupted, and then you suppress it, and then when you're working out you bring it up again, and so you have to relive it again, and you're just masking the negotiation with emotion with the serotonin high that you get from working out. Now, again, working out's good for you. I don't want to try to appear like I'm saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, but don't use a tool where it's not meant to be used. Working out is good for you. Serotonin feels good, and it puts stresses on your body, and there's just a lot of benefits to it. But using those benefits and just putting them on top of the box that contains the wallowing negative emotion of that experience earlier, is just masking it. It's not negotiating with the negative side of things to pull out the positive. And that, I would say, is the first step towards cultivating a sense of inner peace, is being willing and able to negotiate with your perspective on positive and negative experiences to gain a more holistic feeling about negativity and positivity and how similar they really are to one another. It's quite a practice. It takes persistence to try to keep seeing the good in the bad and the bad in the good. For me, it was way harder to cultivate seeing the bad and the good, because there's just this animalistic perspective that good is good, and just leave it as like it's good. Just don't why pollute it? Why make it bad? And when it came to, in my view, solving this part of the puzzle, that was a huge piece, is not just solving half the puzzle, because you can't fully pull negative experience into the realm of peace unless you're also willing to pull positive experience into the realm of peace. So today I talked about the power of perspective and the role that it plays in our experience, the value that perspective has in forging out inner peace, and two really good ways to do it. One being education, or becoming intimate with whatever the topic is, whether that be experiential education or spiritual education or academic education, or it doesn't matter. Any type of education surrounding any type of variable gives you a more holistic understanding of that variable, and it helps you adopt a broader perception of that variable. I will be putting out more content tomorrow. I hope you all have a great day.